Hi, I'm Liliana, and welcome to this video where I talk about my experiences accessing the 12 dimensions of consciousness. Please hit the CC button for closed captions. First, a heartfelt thank you to all of you who watched my first video on accessing 5D consciousness and connected with me to discuss your thoughts. Our conversation sparked a deeper exploration of my awareness. A lot of you wanted me to speak more to what I'm experiencing and how I'm accessing this understanding. Many of you asked me to speak to the 12 dimensions of consciousness and expand on what I'm referring to as 5D consciousness. Some of you also wanted to understand my background a bit more. So, I am a spiritual ascension guide, an intuitive energy healer, and a private equity lawyer. I am the biological intersection of two spiritually powerful Indian lineages of seers, mystics, and famous devotional saint poets, Mirabai and Narsi Mehta. My childhood was unusual and steeped in Vedic knowledge and spiritual philosophical discussions. I chose the hustle life of corporate law for 20 years before the higher power pulled me back onto a spiritual path. I was not working towards this or any particular outcome. I was manifesting being on my best and highest timeline. And I trust that whatever is happening is aligned with this. The 5D consciousness that I've been referring to is basically experiencing, having experienced myself, the transitioning of my mind space, which is my mindset, nervous system, beliefs, emotional well being, energetic well being, transitioning of that from the fourth dimensional way of operating into the fifth dimensional way of operating. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this, but there's a lot of talk within the spiritual community around this event happening. So I know that this is happening for several of us out there. Overnight, the old operating patterns of my life simply just stopped resonating with me, and my nervous system became very calm for the first time. This knowing that I speak of, it came to me as a sudden awareness, like a download, the morning after I experienced the final transitioning of my mind space. It felt like a lot of information hit me in one go, and concepts that I'd not really thought about, not looked into, started explaining themselves in my head. That day, it felt like it lasted for a few weeks. Naturally, I haven't been able to process a lot of this information yet. I'm reflecting on it, writing about it, and discussing it with other people so that I can cross question myself and dig more into what I'm understanding to get better, clearer understanding. After my conversation with some of you, I started looking into the 12 dimensions of consciousness with sort of more interest because so far, until that point, my journey had really just been about my own emotional healing. And this learning has made me look at and consider what I'm feeling experientially and internally in relation to what I'm reading externally. And what I realize is that in addition to this 5D way of operating, this information that I'm accessing, the download, it is coming to me from my access to the 11th and the 12th dimensions of consciousness, which are source expression and formless awareness. I couldn't honestly point you to which dimension of consciousness is letting me access and experiment with dark energy, but all I can say is that it's an expensive experience. None of this means that I've stopped being a human. The way I put it to myself is that I just finally learned to make the right life decisions. And I think my inner child resisted growing up for so long that when she when it finally grew up, she just grew all the way up. With that said, let's talk about the 12 dimensions of consciousness, what they are and how they work. Now, all of us experience at least the first four dimensions of consciousness, and a lot of us out here experience several more. This here is the first dimension, singularity. In this dimension, there is nothing, no existence, no creation, not even darkness. This dimension is the void. It is experienced through survival intelligence. In emotional and spiritual terms, this is where the experience of an ego death sits, where it feels like you are entering an emotional void. The next dimension is the second dimension, duality or polarity, where nothingness splits into two, light and dark energy, yin and yang, good and evil, creation and destruction, love and fear. Energy is experienced here through contrast intelligence, a level of intelligence one higher than survival. The psychological concepts that resonate for me in experiencing this dimension are that of the conscious and subconscious mind and light and shadow emotions, as propounded by Dr. Carl Jung. When I entered my own emotional void, I experienced the splitting of my own psyche and discovering my own polarities. Next, the third dimension, earth, reality. This is where matter has density and where our bodies live. Low frequency dark energy, like gravity and air, maintain density of matter in this dimension. The dense matter is formed and touched using intellectual intelligence or perception, which is one level higher than contrast intelligence. Next is the fourth dimension. This is the most important dimension for human beings. This is the matrix. This is where we create our own reality energetically. This dimension can only be experienced, not physically touched. In the fourth dimension, dark and light energy are experienced as emotions. Energy is experienced as light emotions like love, peace, joy, and bliss. Dark energy is experienced through shadow emotions like fear, guilt, shame, and anger. In this dimension, energy is experienced and interacted with using emotional intelligence, especially empathy for self and others, which is one level higher than intellectual intelligence. The fourth dimension is typically referred to as the dimension of heart based awareness. For me, though, this term doesn't really reflect how critical this dimension really is to human life. I find it more fitting to call this the dimension of human potential. Because in this dimension live the human mind space and the human field of potential. The mind space exists as a fixed energetic location at any given point of time in the field of 4D consciousness. Like the body exists in a fixed location on Earth, the mind space exists as a fixed location in the 4D, like a GPS signal, but in the fourth dimension. The mind space location is found by plotting the frequency of a person's physical health, emotional health, mindset health, which is their beliefs, thoughts, behaviors, the health of those, not the nature of those, but the health of those, and their spiritual awareness. When the mind space comes across a potential energetic interaction, whether a thought or a person, a field of potential energetic outcomes appears based on the match or gap between the frequency of the mind space and the frequency of the incoming energy. If both frequencies are high, high frequency potential outcomes appear in the field. If both frequencies are low, low frequency potentials appear in the field. Emotional intelligence works with the mind space to consider the potential possible field of outcomes and choose the desired potential outcome, which then leads to the energetic interaction taking place in a way that aligns with that desired outcome. This interaction creates an emotional reality consisting of light and dark matter. To me, this resonates with the Vedic concept of karma. Good karma coming from light energetic interaction, and bad karma coming from dark energetic interaction. And this energetic interaction then converts into 3D reality through the things we do, say, the actions we take, the situations that we find ourselves in. Where there is a frequency mismatch between the mind space and the potential energetic interaction, the field of potential outcomes does not appear. The 3D equivalent, emotional equivalent of that is banging your head against the wall, where we experience this as someone having mentally checked out of a situation, a relationship, a job, while still being physically present, or as plans or relationships that just suddenly fall apart. What this means is that the way we act and behave in our 3D life and how we feel about our 3D life does, in fact, reflect to us who we are choosing to be as a person in the fourth dimension, how we are choosing to feel about ourselves, what actions and decisions we are taking for ourselves in the fourth dimension, what narratives we are holding for ourselves in the fourth dimension. This is not in any way meant to shame or judge anyone, and there are always life circumstances that can't be avoided. This is just to bring awareness and offer confirmation that becoming aware of emotional state and frequency of our conscious and subconscious choices and using our emotional intelligence to make better life choices really does change life in 3D and whatever that looks like for each person. But using intellectual intelligence and staying invested in only using intellectual intelligence to navigate the fourth dimension by denying your issues, pushing through, numbing, deflecting, coping, distracting from the consequences of life, existing bad choices, if there are, just because it's easier, safer, less uncomfortable, less painful. That is how we repeat those bad choices and repeat the patterns of emotional chaos in our lives. This isn't rocket science or news, but it is a fact. It seems like it's a legal fact at this point. This is my personal area of interest, and my experiments with dark energy are towards decoding the principles of human decision making and human interactions with the aim of understanding how highest human potential is actualized. Up next is the fifth dimension. Some spiritual schools of thought call this dimension of unity or soul consciousness. This is the dimension where the human soul lives. It is the dimension of presence and non judgment of self and others. I experience interacting with energy in this dimension through discernment. By discernment, I mean the ability to choose from within a field of potential outcomes an outcome that is not just the a good outcome, but it is the right outcome. How does that happen? Before the mind space makes a choice from within a field of potential outcomes, the soul asks, what is the right thing to do here for me and for the others? And all truths of the situations are considered: yours, theirs, facts, wants, needs, capacities, desires. And all of these are filtered then through the soul's 0 point neutral to come to a decision of what's the right choice here. Next is the sixth dimension. This is called the dimension of the higher mind or sacred geometry. From this dimension onwards, interaction with energy is done through different kinds of spiritual intelligence, or the same spiritual intelligence, I couldn't tell you. In the sixth dimension, here is where there is access to archetypes, higher intelligence, blueprint consciousness, and soul level pattern recognition. This is the dimension where I see the molecular structure of the human soul. Next up is the seventh dimension. This is called the dimension of oversoul awareness. In this dimension, there is access to soul contracts, karmic themes, past lives, and other timelines. After that is the eighth dimension. This is Akashic records and universal memories. All the good energy healers and tarot readers, they access the seventh and eighth dimensions of consciousness. Then comes the ninth dimension of consciousness: galactic or collective intelligence and star consciousness. I personally don't really have much to resonate with in this one. The 10th dimension is the dimension of infinite possibility, universal unity. This is where all possibilities exist simultaneously and there is no separation of time. People who do really high level manifestation work can, I think, access this dimension of consciousness. After that is the 11th dimension of consciousness, source awareness, where consciousness becomes aware of itself. And finally, we have the 12th dimension. This is the one of absolute source, pure being, where there is oneness with the creator and there is access to infinite formless awareness. So, these principles of creation that I'm talking about, the laws of creation consciousness, I am loath to call it quantum anything, but perhaps that is what this is. This is principles, laws of quantum consciousness that I'm accessing. And the way I see them, they are likely to have practical applications for the benefit of the fields of quantum health, quantum physics, and quantum mechanics. Which then brings me to a sensitive issue. Look, we're told that the laws of physics are not separate from the fundamental laws of creation. We're aware that these laws haven't really been updated in over 50 years, despite a multitude of research. And we also know that there are significant gaps in the collective scientific understanding of observer reality, relationships, gravity, quantum gravity, dark matter, dark and energy, information based physics, time, locality, causality. I'm no scientist, but I am a lawyer at heart despite all of my spirituality. And the lawyer in me does think that, look, when a set of existing laws is unsatisfactory for its purpose, it is illogical to consider them sacrosanct enough to dismiss alternative solutions as fringe, meta, and the like. Just because something is difficult, it doesn't mean it's not worth looking into. And just because something doesn't fit into what someone said 50 years ago also doesn't mean that it couldn't be true. And I'd like to extend that analogy to really fields of mental and physical health as well, because there are plenty of professionals out there who do acknowledge that current approaches aren't as effective as we'd like them to be. I'm not saying take anyone's word for anything, but I do think it would be helpful if scientists and doctors could allow for possibility of revisiting previously dismissed theories in their own fields, previously unconsidered concepts, perhaps, with newer understanding. If there's one thing I've learned from 20 years doing international mergers and acquisitions, it is that you can't solve complex problems by working in silos. It takes multidisciplinary laws working together to successfully achieve any major project. And what is bigger than working out the quantum laws of everything? Because what they say is true. Everything is connected. I hope I said something that sparked a curiosity within you. I would love for you to continue engaging with me. If something I say is unclear to you or doesn't make sense to you, please ask. I love finding different ways to frame concepts for different people. Watch out for my next videos. Share this video around. Thank you for watching. Bye.